Welcome back everyone. In this episode, we'll be covering a total of 4 variations that arise from this position. Notice our opponent has already played knight c6 and they have a pawn on e6. Namely, in this episode, we'll be covering the pin defense, also known as the pin variation. We'll be covering knight f6, knight e7, and then finally we'll be covering queen c7, the Siberian Trap. And if you haven't seen the Siberian Trap before, you will in fact fall for it. And very quickly before I start, if you're noticing that I'm not covering some of the more common moves, allow me to explain myself. This series is in fact a comprehensive guide to the Smith-Morra Gambit. A6 will be covered in the Paulson variation video. Likewise, D6 will be covered in the Shevinigan structure video. I'll be going from most to least common. We'll start with the pin defense. Now the pin defense is one we have to take seriously. It is a very reputable defense against the Smith-Morra Gambit, and it's very successful as you can see at the grandmaster level, but I think you'll find that I have a few novelties for you that may just turn the tables. You'll start to notice a theme in the Smith-Morra Gambit, where if your opponent plays good moves, you tend to stick to the normal Smith-Morra Gambit plan of castling queen e2, but if your opponent plays something inaccurate or makes a mistake or a blunder, that's when you sort of deviate from your initial plan. So in this position, our opponent is playing a reputable defense, so we'll go ahead and castle and stick to our plan. There are 3 moves people play here: knight f6, knight e7, and capturing our knight. Of these 3, knight e7 I would say is by far the best, and I would consider capturing our knight inaccurate. So say they capture, we recapture. Why was that inaccurate? Well, 2 reasons really. First, they traded off their bishop really for no reason. I think a more accurate plan would have been waiting and hoping we play a3. But more importantly, since we haven't played a3, we have this nice a3 square for our dark bishop. This can cut them off from castling if they don't put their knight on e7, which a lot of beginners won't, so look out for that. I'll assume though that like most players, they find knight ge7. Here, I have a very cool move for you, queen d6. This is one to remember, because you will get this position quite a bit, and queen d6 has a few very nasty ideas behind it. First of all, after a move like queen d6, anyone would castle to safety, and now that it's our turn, I can start to show off some of our ideas. The obvious first move is bishop a3, but alongside bishop a3, other moves to look for are, first of all, retreating your bishop back to d3, where it can be a more useful attacker of your opponent's king. h4 and h5 can be very powerful here, but let's start by looking at bishop a3. Obviously, the idea here is not ever to capture that knight. Keep in mind, our idea with developing our bishop to a3 is just to have a really killer bishop, and is here when we start to calculate for our opponents when we realize the point of queen d6. We have in fact blockaded their d-pawn with our queen. Bet you haven't seen that one before. Most people here play the reasonable move of over-defending their knight with rook e8. Our plan from here will be getting our rooks to open files and going for a kingside attack. I think we're ready to move on to the next variation. Returning to the starting position of the pin defense for black, I'd like to talk about what happens if they know better than to capture on c3 and start knight e7, the best move. As I said before, they're playing the right move, so we'll stick to our plan. Queen e2, most people will castle and will play rook d1, again sticking to the exact same plan. Let's say they play a6. This introduces an idea I really wanted to talk about, which is bishop g5. You'll notice since they haven't captured, we don't have the a3 square for our dark bishop, and usually when that's the case, our bishop will either want to come to f4 or g5. In this exact type of position though, where there's a knight on e7 we can pin to a queen, it's almost always in our best interests to go ahead and develop our bishop to g5. Our other rook obviously wants to come to the c file, and I think it's a pretty strong primer on how to handle if they don't capture the knight. We'll want to pin this way instead, stick to our normal plan, and just take advantage of our superior pieces. The final line in the pin defense I'll cover is this silly move where they play knight f6, a mistake. Here's another rule for you. Whenever they have a pawn on e6 and a knight on f6, we're always going to play e5. More or less no matter what. Shout out to the 7 people who hung their knight here, hilarious. So after we play e5, they'll usually swing their knight out to g4, and our goal here is going to be defending this pawn again. You'll notice our pawn is attacked twice and defended once. And whenever we need to add another defender to this pawn, it's always a good idea to stick to our plan with queen e2. Simple chess is good chess. And from here, I won't go too much into the minutia of it, but we will want our bishop on g5 eventually. And the way this tends to play out is at some point they castle, and then we can play h3, kicking their knight. It can't go back to f3, so it has to come to h6, where we'll capture it and open up their king. So remember, if they have a pawn on e6 and a knight on f6, always push e5, and then if they jump to g4, always over defend the pawn with queen e2. Case in point, next we're going to look at knight f6 here. If you remember, I called this a mistake earlier, and it's because of e5. The vast majority of players will play knight g4, and if you were paying attention for the last 30 seconds, you would know the move here is queen e2, defending the pawn twice. And if they add another attacker, we simply add another defender. The reason I really like this particular variation is because in this position, it does force them to find f6, which isn't the easiest move to find if you've never tried the French defense. But once again, our plan stays the same. We'll castle, get our rooks to the C and D file, adding another X-ray attacker to the queen, and then after they castle, we'll play h3 and kick their knight to h6. So that's how we handle knight f6. Next, we'll look at knight e7, which is a little bit more accurate. Here, I would highly recommend the same move that Mark Esserman recommends in his book Mayhem in the Morra, knight g5. Hopefully you're starting to get a feel for how we like to develop our pieces. I see f6 a lot, but it seems like h6 is the most common move, and should they play h6, we have a tactical motif that you should recognize from the last video. While all of our focus has been over on the queen side of the board, there's these nice open dark squares. It's time to swing our knight out to b5 and threaten checkmate. That's right, there are in fact smothered mates also in the Smith-Morra Gambit. If you didn't already love it enough, the 31% of players who don't find d5 lose the game. If they play d5, we just capture. First of all, more than half of players will capture here, which loses the game immediately. We have a very nice retreating move with bishop f4. The thought behind bishop f4 is that we're targeting this square for check, and it's really pretty unavoidable unless you bring your king out, and we're completely crushing here. The engine's second favorite move is d takes c4, which straight up hangs the queen, but that is about the best you can do. But it seems like most people actually play queen a5 check, which is abysmal. We have this cool move b4. It's a very similar trap in the Jabava London, because after they recapture, the c7 square is undefended, and we can win the tempo back with bishop d2. The most common move loses immediately, so we'll assume they take the free piece, and while almost no one is going to make it this far, this does in fact transition to an endgame. But you're the one that chose to play a gambit. If they know this niche theory until move 10, then you just got. As I said before, usually after I pin their knight, I'm more used to seeing f6, and I do want to show this line because again, I see this a lot. And the move here you should always play whenever you retreat your bishop, it always goes to e3, almost no matter what. This is a very, very comfy square. But keep in mind, while it is a strong piece, it is going to block our queen in e2 from defending this pawn. They finish rerouting their knight. From here, we'll stick to our normal plan. We'll castle, queen e2, d1, rook c1. Afterwards, h4, h5 looks very, very good. We'll attack on the king side and we'll checkmate our opponent. And the final line to cover is queen c7, the very famous Siberian Trap. This is a line that very, very strong players like playing against very, very weak players, but I'm going to show you a line we can play to get a very, very consistent advantage against the Siberian Trap, and I can pretty much guarantee you that at least one person watching this will have some sort of win over a titled player or someone they have no business beating because they try to play the Siberian Trap against you, but you watch this video and you remember the refutation. I'll start by showing the Siberian Trap itself. First, white castles and follows the normal Smith-Morra plan. Black plays knight f6, seemingly going for a standard setup. White continues his plan with queen e2, and here black springs their trap with knight g4. There are a lot of ways to go wrong here, but by far the most common is h3. And the reason may not stand out too obviously, it's knight d4, forking our queen while removing our defender. Plenty of people will hang the mate here, not seeing it, but this is a Siberian Trap. This is what you need to look out for. So we've gone over how to fall into the Siberian Trap. Let's figure out how to beat it. We'll start by castling, pretending to fall for it. We'll of course start knight f6. And it's important to remember, instead of queen e2 here, we're going to just keep attacking this queen, starting with knight b5. The only move here is retreating the queen. And it's worth mentioning, at this point your opponent will still probably think they're going to get the Siberian Trap on you. The important move to remember here is e5, a very nice pawn sacrifice, because after they capture the pawn, we capture back and they capture with queen. We're going to play rook e1 with tempo. We may be down 2 pawns here, but all black's doing is moving around their queen, and now they have to move it again. If they go to c5, we just retreat our bishop. If they go back to b8, the correct idea here is actually g3 and then attacking it with our bishop. Next, let's come back to the position after they retreat their queen when we push e5. I'd like to look at what happens if they don't actually capture our pawn, instead play the slightly better knight g4. Now if you remember, normally when they swing out their knight like this, we want to start with queen e2 because that's part of our development plan anyways, but it should be obvious that in this position a much better move is bishop f4, x-raying the queen, and as we discussed in the last video, Sicilian players love a6, so we'll usually end up delivering this check and trading, which gives us a pretty comfy position, and in the event that they do capture, we're of course winning the game, and the engine likes taking here, which is dope as hell, and that is all 4 variations. Make sure to follow the link in the pinned comment and join our Lead Chess team, and once you're in, feel free to challenge me by clicking this link.
Chess Gambit explain will help